they're thinking 6 inches deep. If we were to mill and do an overlay, we could do a 3-inch half an hour.
Right, but if we take over the road, that still obligates us.
That still obligates us
to
25, 30 years.
do that sort of thing.
And so,
The 75,000 that you're estimating right now does not have like a sinking fund to cover the re-mill at the end of 25 years either.
so we have in year number 18, a mill and overlay, which is in that number. So our 20-year cost we're assuming is about 1.6 million. So we would get additional Class B and C road funds. And over the 20-year period, about $100,000, just over $100,000, which helps but doesn't go very far. Roads are expensive.
David, does that 75,000 per year maintenance include the additional staff that would be needed?
Yes, we put in hold on just a second, let me look at this. We have, yes, there would be manpower included in that.
And equipment?
And equipment, yes. So we have a capital outlay at the beginning for an additional 10-wheel truck with the appropriate snow plow. We would have to have that year one. We just don't have enough resources right now to allocate our vehicles to Canyon Road and still get to the rest of the city like we need to.
And what would that capital outlay be?
As far as cost, we're estimating at $180,000.
So, a question on that, David.
And we would amortize that over the 20-year life.
Have we looked at the possibility of maybe partnering with PG to do that? So instead of us having to have a snowplow to do Canyon Road and them having to have a snowplow and staff, would there be a possibility of working with them and creating an agreement where both cities would kind of upfront that cost, but then either depending on the year or the storm or however we want to work it, one city would be responsible to just maintain the entire section of road. So we would plow from here to State Street, or they would plow from State Street to here, so that each city's not having to upfront that total cost.
Yeah. You know, and we talked about that briefly. The way we've approached this is trying to be conservative. If it is given to us, if the city has to take it over, what's worst case scenario here? Let's be conservative, right? Because the last thing we want to do is come to you and say, hey, we can do this for $25,000 a year, not a big deal. And then all of a sudden we get a $50,000, $60,000 a year bill. That would be detrimental to our budget.
Right.
So we're looking at this saying, hey, if it's up to us and we have to provide this, this is what it's going to cost.
So this is worst case, we do everything on our own, like absolute worst scenario.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, even if we do have our own 10-wheel truck, it's a machine and it will break down. And it may break down at the most inopportune time. December 15th, right before Christmas, and we get a huge snowstorm and all the places that fix 10-wheel trucks are kind of backlogged and shut down for the holidays. What do? That's when we would call Pleasant Grove and say, hey, guess what? We need your help. And so I would hate to have just one option and then have something happen where we're stuck without a backup plan. And
Well, we always need a plan B.
Absolutely.
Whether we buy a new truck or not, there's always got to be a plan B for, like you said, what happens if that truck goes south? Well, now we have to call PG or Highland or whoever it is.
And those cities are great to work with, and they would help us out in things like that. We've got a good relationship there.
Do we have any way of getting vehicle counts on how much that road is used for through traffic to access the canyon as opposed to being used by local residents?
UDOT may have some information. You know, the latest counters that I saw on Canyon Road were probably a year and a half ago. I don't know if they put those counters down, you know, in Pleasant Road to see how many vehicles were tripping at the front end versus, you know, past our city limit, find out how many were through. We can ask UDOT what their ADT is.
Because if they're talking about giving us a road like this, as magnanimous as it sounds of them, you know, what they're doing is they're putting the bill for all of this traffic that is really highway traffic going to the canyon on a small town that happens to be at the mouth of the canyon, right? And if we could use that kind of data to bolster our case and say, look, most of the traffic on here isn't our residents, it doesn't make sense for us to take it over, that, it seems like that would be something they would listen to, I would hope.
So, one other comment with that, Daniel, I was actually talking to one of the PG council members, and they kind of thought the same thing, is that there's probably a lot of residents from like the Linden, Orem area that either want to come up and go to Highland, Alpine, Mountain Canyon, whether they want to go out to Cabela's or whatever. But on the same side of that, we also probably have a lot of Highland, Alpine, even some part of Lehigh that still access that road to go down into North Ormond Road. So, I don't know, if we looked at the numbers, I bet we would probably find that most of the use of that road is actually not even secret roads. I mean, that's just my gut feeling, but I don't think our residents are using it as much as other residents around us.
And it's changing, it's very dynamic. And one of the biggest things that has helped change the traffic patterns, and people are slow to change their habits, but with 4800 West and getting that road completed, and that road goes all the way to the freeway, some of the traffic potentially has been shifted over. And that's one of the reasons why UDOT would like to divest itself of 146, is because now they've picked up this additional roadway, and it's under their jurisdiction. And so now they're putting resources to a 5-lane road on 4800 West all the way to the freeway. So they have two parallel state routes that are so close to each other. From UDOT's perspective, they're saying this just doesn't make sense.
I thought they had made an agreement with the county that if they built North County Road, North County Boulevard, that they would then give the county Canyon Road.
They did, yeah.
And why has the county reneged on that agreement?
Well, it's difficult for the county. The county assessed the roadway 146, and they really don't have the resources to plug in to maintain the road. And because most of the county roads they're not like 146, and they're not like 4800 West. Most of the county roads are just that, county roads. They're 28 feet wide. They do chip seals every so often, and they're just maintained as county roads, not as a.
But they got a road for free in North County Boulevard.
I don't know that it was. I think it wasn't so much for free. They did put their own funds into it. The county did. So
Okay.
there was a lot of work by the county to put that road as well. But the other issue is all the county maintenance sheds. They're in South Provo. That's the closest one to us. So if we have a snowstorm and they start mobilizing from South Provo, we're going to be 3-4 hours by the time we get that
That's
road.
easy to fix. All they have to do is give us a budget of $20,000 a year, and we'll plow it for them, right? That's just a money transfer.
Right.
It's really the building of the road and the maintaining of the road, which they can do regardless of where their trucks are located.
But even though that you say that, Daniel, when I left this morning at 6:30 to go to work, it was really funny to see that all the side roads were plowed going down
Oh, yeah.
from Cedar Hills and
Oh,
PG.
same thing.
All of them were pretty much just wet. There was no snow on any of them, but you get on Canyon Road, and it was an ice skating rink this
Well,
morning.
there was a car that was up on the rocks.
Oh, I'm sure.
It slid and gone up on the rocks halfway down Canyon Road.
And it's because nobody plows it, nobody cares about it.
Well, UDOT's their resources are really stretched thin right now, and they openly admit, hey, we're getting more and more miles of UDOT road to maintain, and we have the same workforce, we have the same amount of trucks and the same employees, and they're trying to juggle.
You know what, when you grow, you have to get more income to handle the larger infrastructure requirements. That's part of a growing county and a growing state. You can't just keep your resources fixed when things grow, and they'll have to learn that. That's hard.
Are we being railroaded into this decision, or, do we not have to take it? I certainly am open to listening to all the pros and cons, but I don't think as a city we need to be forced into, taking the maintenance over of a road that, unless we can pay for it, and it makes sense for us. In a lot of ways, it does make sense, because a lot of our residents do use it. Let's keep them happy and safe. So, there's some good reasons. But they can't just say, it's yours now, without our decisions, or.
I have spoken with some officials who feel that at some point UDOT will just say, hey, we just aren't going to maintain that road, and we need the cities to take it over. Here you go. Now, as we talk to UDOT, typically that's not what they do. There's another road up in Salt Lake where It was a state route, really, really small, went under the railroad tracks 1 lane wide. So yeah, I mean, every other car had to stop and clear the underpass. The city didn't want it. You know, it's a multi-million dollar deal to redo the underpass. The city wouldn't take it. The state maintained, the state kept it. And it's not maintained very, you know, it's just not a priority. It's not a high traffic road. UDOT's into moving traffic. That's what they do. They like 5-lane roads like 4800 West where they know they can take a large population and move that traffic to the freeway. And that's what UDOT's about. So as the roads become less and less used and less average daily traffic, they like to divest themselves of those kinds of roads and give them back to the cities.
Let me add just a little bit of color to that in terms of, neither UDOT nor the county can force us to ever take the road. I think what Dave was referring to is that they have both said quite clearly that they have no intention of ever making this road a priority. Therefore, if it does become a priority to Cedar Hills and Pleasant Grove, that's where the pressure comes that would be self-inflicted, because we want a road that is good and usable and safe, and they're not willing to do that. So at that point, where David says, eventually you're forced to take the road, it's because you feel like you need to fix this road for your residents, and neither the county nor UDOT is willing to do that. Therefore, you have to do it. So I think where we are with this road is that there's been a rock and a hard place, is that I don't believe they are going to do anything. I exchanged a bunch of emails with Andrew Jackson of MAG this afternoon, and he seems confident that we'll be able to cobble the money together in order to fix the road. The real problem is, where do you come up with the money to maintain it? And so they seem to think that there won't be much maintenance for the first 5 or 6 years. It's a big road, other than, you know, David mentioned in year 3 that you give it treatment. But at some point, then that maintenance will come home to roost. If you're not prepared for it, then you're forced to raise property taxes, which nobody wants to do.
So what do you think, just hypothetically speaking, because if we keep pushing this issue out another, let's say probably 2 to 3 years, that road's gonna be undrivable. I mean, it's getting to the condition where right now, I mean, it's hazardous on some instances. But if we wait another 2, 3 years and the county keeps pushing back and UDOT keeps pushing back and nobody does anything, where are we at in 3 years? Are they finally just gonna say, well, we're not gonna do anything to it, and if you guys wanna do something, great? Are they gonna let it get to that point? Or finally, if we keep pushing back on them, are they gonna be forced to do something?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. Well, they both have said quite clearly that it is never going to be a priority.
Well, I know it's not a priority, but if we keep pushing back and it's becoming a hazard and people can't drive on it because of the potholes and everything else that's starting to happen, what are they gonna do? Because in another couple of years,
I agree, it could, and so I think
Well,
they,
the other thing to consider is UDOT has $1 billion budget. If we're talking about that we're gonna cobble together the money and find a way to actually redo the road properly, $75,000 a year in maintenance really is nothing out of $1 billion budget. They could surely find room in their budget for maintaining a road that has been redone.
So I think the problem is, as a state
I
entity,
mean, the percentage is microscopic.
I think the problem as a state entity is that they are pulled from every city and county in the state wanting the exact same thing that we're asking for. And so, because we are a small city and it's a small road compared to Salt Lake and St. George and all of these other roads, they see it as a small priority. The only, at least my understanding, is the only way to force UDOT to take care of this road is if the state legislature forces them to earmark funds for that. Otherwise, they're not under any obligation to do anything.
I can put together a really smashing website and a public campaign petition to
Which may be an
Let me
option
know,
for
I'll
us.
help you with
Which may be an option for us, is to lobby the state legislature for it. But I don't think that lobbying UDOT's gonna do anything. It's gonna be the state who forces them to spend money on that project, because they're pulled in so many different directions, and they're going to always answer to the bigger people and or not, we're such a small city.
You're hired as our lobbyist.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
You're hired as our lobbyist.
And I would be all the pictures you need of that road to put on your website.
Yeah, so I do think that there are productive conversations taking place. I just don't know where they're gonna end up. So legislator from Pleasant Grove, according to Andrew Jackson, was open to the idea of allocating more funds to SR 146. But that's just one legislator, and we don't know where that's gonna go. So it's best to, be realistic about these things. And we're pushing the ball forward. I think we are putting pressure on them, and they're pushing back as well. So we will keep discussing.
Sure, 0.0075% of their annual budget.
Exactly.
Back to Councilor Augustus' question, we can't go several years without doing anything. Well, that's where the $4.4 million is coming from, is they're prepared to do something. If the cities were to say, hey, we have no desire whatsoever to take over Canyon Road, if Pleasant Grove and Cedar was to decide that, UDOT would proceed with their plan to spend the $4.4 million doing the 6-inch mill and overlay. And they would redo the surface of the street within the next year. And so then that would give us a new surface. It would address,
Not
say,
a
greater issues.
And now we're gonna be another $2 million.
But we wouldn't have potholes and things like that on the road we have now. That road is gone.
Okay.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but from the mouth of the canyon to about the fire station, we've improved, or the developers, Cedars and everybody else have developed it to the current ultimate standard of that road, is that correct?
That's correct. Except for there's a small segment on the east side from the mountain canyon up to that.
From that pump station down
Down
to
to
mountain
Canyon.
top estates or whatever it is.
So there is a small section of curbing that are not in there. And that's all I had on that issue. One other issue, tomorrow Governor Herbert has asked that we fly our flags half staff so that in honor of Sergeant Corey White.
Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Hall, time is yours.
I will try to calm down. So I think the only thing I have to report is that I had some students approach me at the start of the semester about building code for our city, because they'd seen what we've done in the past. I wasn't planning on taking that on again this year, but I told them I'd be happy to talk them through it. We went through a lot of different options, and what they chose is they wanted to work on an issue tracker for the city. Now the way this works is that they have 90 students in the class, and they all throw their ideas onto a big wiki page. There were about 40 or 50 ideas this year, and the top 10 ideas based on student votes are the ones that get built. So ours was one of the ones that was chosen to get built. They are wanting to build a mobile app and a website where residents can take a picture of their phone, the problem that they see, whether that's a broken sidewalk, a street sign is fallen down, bad water pressure, whatever it is, and just click send. That would tag it with GPS coordinates and get it to the city staff so they know where that issue is occurring. And then staff would be able to update the site when the issue is handled. The residents would get a little notification on their phone, hey, your problem's been taken care of. There is lots of work on other cities that have done stuff like this, but they are all predominantly large cities that have sunk money into fairly complex solutions that work for them. Our team is looking at building something small that's really cost-effective and simple for a smaller city. And so they have a team of 8 students working on it. They're going to town on it. They've met with David to get some input on what the city's needs are, and we'll see what we come up with.
Hey, can I ask you a quick question on that? Have you guys looked to see if other cities are doing something similar to that?
No small cities are doing this.
The bigger ones are?
Big ones like Boston, San Francisco, Chicago, they all have systems like this. And you go to a web page and it shows all of their outstanding issues, and then feedback of when the staff closed that issue and handled it.
Is there any posted or public feedback on how the systems are working, what their challenges are, if it's getting used, if it's getting abused, anything like that?
It's a good question. I'll reach out to my contact in Boston. I've talked to the guy in Boston who runs their system, and he indicated they're really happy with it, but I'll get some feedback from
Yes,
them.
I'd just be curious to see, like, if they could have, like, their top 3 items that they could have changed or maybe done differently.
Okay.
Just to see if there's anything that we could maybe improve upon or do differently.
I also have a contact with a guy who runs a company who does this for a living.
Cool.
And so I'm going to check with him to see what the options are in terms of the city just purchasing the stuff that they have and see if it would be cost effective for a smaller city. They're really focused on big markets right now. We're not really on their radar.
But maybe we could tailor their system down to meet our needs or something.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mr. Gettis?
Okay, I will just briefly report on the January 23rd Planning Commission meeting that was held here. Most of the city council, I believe, was in attendance. It was well attended by the residents. The developer came back with a modified plan from the previous version. I thought there was a lot of good input, good discussion, and the Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve the concept. So I believe it will be
Recommended approval.
recommended approval, so it's going to the next Planning Commission for more details, and then we'll see it eventually.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
What's that?
I was under the impression that it would go to the city council for conceptual approval at city council level. Does that not happen, or is it?
Yes.
And then it goes back to the planning commission for the details, or?
So the planning commission makes a recommendation to the city council.
Trent, can you speak?
Oh, right. So the planning commission will actually make a recommendation to the city council. The planning commission doesn't make any approval or grant anything. They have to make a recommendation to the council. So it'll come to the city council from the recommendation based on the planning commission
For conceptual.
for conceptual approval. And then we take and either approve or disapprove with our corrections, notes, changes, whatever. We send it back to the planning commission. Then they look at it again, and then they will make a final recommendation. And they may go back and forth a couple of times in between that. But yes, it comes to us for conceptual approval also.
And I think the reason why we're not discussing now, there's a public hearing notice time, at least 30 days, I think. So I think we'll probably see next city council meeting.
And how tall is the building that they proposed?
They proposed, it shrunk a story. It's now 4 stories with the wings now at 3 stories.
Entirely?
No, just for the one apartment complex.
Just the small?
Just a small 20 feet and then a step there.
It's still 300 units.
Still 300.
Yeah, that's important.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Mrs. Reese?
Let's see. I'm going to be meeting with Sam shortly on we're going to be issuing a press release. He is having a meet and greet in the visitor room for rides and for companies that's maybe interested in visitors, such as catering companies, florists, food designers, that sort of thing. So we will have a press release on that. And then he's also putting together a video of what the visitor room look like and what we can do here, so that he'll be working on that as well. YCC is planning for the dance this Friday, February 7th. It is for kids ages 12 to 15. They're going to have a dance and games and a bake-off. So kids can bring a baked item for judging it that night. And then they're trying to discuss ideas for the Easter egg hunt and summer activities. The Family Festival Committee is meeting later this month. The individual for sponsorships, I can't remember his name, Steve? The Family Festival Committee, I thought you made the recommendation for sponsorships.
Steve Weber.
Steve Weber, he's doing a fantastic job. He is already reaching out to organizations and has already received some commitments on sponsorships, and his goal is to exceed our sponsorship revenue by about $7,000 this year from what we've ever done in the past, so that would be fantastic if we can do that. We continue to get more likes on our social media. It's much slower growth than it was last year, so but we can keep working on that. And then I'm hoping, it looks like Daniel's presenting at the town hall meeting, and you might want to cover that, but you're going to be at the town hall meeting on the 13th. That's the emergency preparedness town hall meeting, and you're going to be looking for email addresses and phone numbers. And so I'm hoping that at that town hall meeting, we'll be successful in getting that information, so that way we can be more proactive here as a team.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Augustus?
So we did have a meeting with North Point Solid Waste. Had a pretty good discussion with them. They're getting very antsy for us to sign our interlocal agreement or calling it now. They said that 4 cities have signed off on it, 4 have not, and 4 probably will not.
Be the board that will not.
Eagle Mountain, Cedar Fort, Alpine, I forget what the fourth one is. They're the ones that aren't participating in the board as it is anyway. And so we don't anticipate that they will come back and want to sign the agreement. But they may, just because they may not want to be kicked off the board, they may still want to have representation. However, their representatives aren't attending our meetings anyway. And so we're going to send a letter to them and reach out to them to find out if they still want to be a part of North Point. And if they don't, then we're going to take action to actually eliminate them from our bylaws and actually exclude them and go through the process and get them formal counted. So, as far as our interlocal agreement with them, they actually sent me an updated email, I believe, day before yesterday. And I'll be sending it over to our city manager so that he can review it also. And then we will have to see if we want to bring that to our council to review, along with the information that our staff is working on, give us some more information as far as what our costs would be if we direct called out to the landfill out west.
Can you send me a copy of that too?
Yeah, I'll send it to you also. The email that I've got is actually the contract from Alpine and what they're paying with the landfill, and we actually grammar requested it as a board so that we have their information so that we can see what they're paying. So it's good information for us to have.
Quick question on that, and it's probably for David. Have we received any updates? You were going to get some bits from Waste Management and the other organization. Have you received anything from them?
No, we have not. So we're still waiting for Waste Management and IRA.
That's been about a month. That's quite a while. Mr. Crowley?
Yeah, none of my committees met in the last meeting, but I just want to be a closure on something I brought up last time, and that was that I was going to meet with the golf manager and city manager about possibly sending out gift certificates. And so I met with them, and it went well, and I feel like that what came of it is that the golf course already gives out gift certificates, not gift certificates for free golf to residents. But a lot of residents are unaware of that, so the gift certificate will help people become aware of that. And they already have plans in place to get that going, and it's made them a little more concrete. So I expect to see these certificates out informing residents of these free golf opportunities probably in March. So I think that's kind of it in my involvement. It seems like they have things pretty well under control with that. And I think it'll help our residents participate on the golf course, which I think will be very good.
So are you going to work with staff to come up with a policy recommendation for the council?
I believe they already had it in their budget, and it was something that was already being planned by them, so they felt that it was already something that has been approved.
All right, thank you. Very good. Let's move on to our scheduled items. Item number 8 is a review action item on adopting an impact fee facilities plan. So, let's see who presenting. Mr. Bunker, you are.
And so the city has been working on an impact fees facilities plan update and an associated impact fee amendment. And we've been working with Science Bank Public Finance and Golden Collins, and they have been reviewing the IFFP for the public safety, culinary water, sanitary sewer, parks, and transportation systems. And you should have in front of you those workouts. The last time that we completed an impact fee facility plan update was in 2007. And so it's good timing for us to get this done. And I will turn the time over to Kirby from Zions Bank Public Finance to give you an update on that and to explain what's in front of you.
Hello, Mayor, Council, good to see you all again. You'll have in front of you the impact fee facility plans and the impact fee analysis. Those documents, which are quite substantial if you want to attack them in one sitting, will explain the changes and we'll explain what the new fees are. Now, I have a presentation prepared, but David also made me aware that you may be tabling the decision. I just wanted to say, before you get that underway, and then you can decide if you want me to give this presentation. It doesn't have to be the same length as last time, I can shrink it back down. Let me just say that in this process, David and we have recommended with the city staff to approach the development community. We sent invitations out, personal invitations out to representatives of the development community. There was not a major showing at the meeting. That doesn't mean that they don't know about it. They knew about the meeting. Their decision to not attend doesn't mean that they didn't care. It just means that they felt good about this process and they didn't see a need to come. You should feel good knowing, though, that invitation was sent, and they're happy that you're involving in this process. That's an open process. In addition, we had a work session last time where you were able to be better educated. So I would just stress that if you're considering tabling discussion, know that we reached out to the development community. The public hearing was in was an announcement made, so they're well aware of today. And they were also well aware of the meeting that we had and invite them to the development community. So I'll let y'all decide if you want to do that. If you do, I have a presentation we can give and we can talk about what you would do with adopting that.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is there any material changes to tonight's presentation that's different from what you presented last time?
The only consideration is that we finished, before that work session, we didn't have a roads impact fee finished. We do have that finished now, and it is dropping by a double-digit percentage.
I think it is our intent to postpone this issue, because I think we would rather have a sit-down meeting with the Home Builders Association and get their blessing on this before we approve it. And so, how long do you think it would take to present this new information?
Well, what you have in front of you has the road impact fee analysis in there, so you'll have the updated. You'll have all, now that it's complete. And so if you go through there, you can see it, and there should be a summary page that shows the final fees.
Would it make sense for me to guide the council to that section of the transportation fee? Then they can see that section that has changed and just go through that, just that individual portion.
So that's the portion I think that would be helpful, is any changes that are different from last time. And I just wanted to get a feel for, you need 5 minutes, you need 10 minutes. What do you?
Well, the presentation is mainly the same. I didn't put in details of the road impact fee analysis, but I can tell you that the data for the city was not extensive. And so the reason we were kind of waiting was to see how much city staff could give us in terms of detailed information, because the state statute has made some changes, and if you're going to include the cost of existing infrastructure, you need to have good information on how much it cost, when you purchased it, who contributed to that plan. We didn't have that level of detail, so we decided what we would do is include what we could include, and because of that law change, and that's the significant reason why the fees are dropping, and it's going down by really about 30%. I could pull those out, but those numbers are in the presentation. So that's the big thing to know, is because of the law changes, we had to be more specific on what we could include. We didn't have that exact information, so we had to leave out some of the existing infrastructure, in addition to the 10-year timing, changing our projects have changed compared to what we planned in 2007, which is so that's the big change. Yes, question?
Can you direct us to the new summary page that had, remember the last slide in our work session?
Yeah, let me pass out a summary page that has
Oh,
that.
so we don't.
So while he's doing that, I wasn't aware that we were going to postpone voting on this. What is the reason behind it?
So,
Why are we postponing this?
so that we can have, I believe Mr. Augustus and Mr. Buck are trying to sit down with the Development Builders Association and see if they have any objections to this before we actually.
Is this a recommendation by council?
Can I-
Council?
Can I actually address that? I have actually been in contact with the executive board and executive directors for the Home Builders Association, and they have said that if we can bring us the updated impact fee analysis before we approve it, that they would also like to review it and kind of give us their stamp of approval or blessing on it, so that in the future, we hopefully won't have any problem with them coming back and saying, oh, well, you guys did this, and we could have helped you have done this, and kind of tweaked it a little bit. So they would like to just review everything, and if they have any further recommendations, they would bring those to us, so that we could maybe incorporate that also along with what Zions Bank has done, just to make sure that we get their buy-out also.
Which I understand, but I will publicly then express extreme frustration with them that they knew we were having these meetings. They were personally invited to these meetings. They
Yes,
chose
we
not
invited- we
to
invited
come.
the,
They chose not to come to these meetings and are now asking us to postpone it so they can give feedback after the
No,
fact.
no, no, hold on, they didn't ask us to postpone it, this is something that I'm asking the council for, is so that I can take it to them. This was more of a recent conversation. Part of the problem that we always face in city governments or neighborhood organizations or anything, we fight complacency a lot of the time. And a lot of times when we have meetings like this, if people look at something just at kind of a high level and very much agree with it, they tend not to get involved. And I think when we had our public hearing on it and invited developers and stuff out to actually review this information, people that are happy with things tend to not get involved with it. And I found this on our homeowners association, city council, wherever it is. And so just because people didn't show up doesn't mean that they're not happy with it. It probably means that they're just kind of happy and the status quo is good enough for them. So the reason that we want to postpone it is so that we can take it to them, even though they didn't show up, and I'm going to talk to them about that also. But it's not something that they're asking us to do.
But if they decide that they want us to make changes, is that going to affect what we've already done and paid?
well, if there were significant changes to the study, yes, it would, if we had to go back and redo things. But I can tell you, the level of detail and the way that we did these fees, we were very conservative and anything controversial. One, I would be surprised if they had somebody really sit down and go through this on the level that we've gone through with city staff to really understand this. If they did take it to that level, I wouldn't see any recommendations. If they had something they wanted to do and significantly change something, a methodology, then yeah, it would cost more for us to go back and review things. I wouldn't anticipate that happening.
But in talking to them, I don't anticipate that they're going to have some earth shatter because they know Roland Collins and they know Zions Bank. I don't think they're going to have any issues or any major recommendations or frankly, probably any recommendation on it. But they just want to see it so that they can say, yeah, we agree with what they've done. You have our backing also. And it just gives us one more leg up. In the future, if somebody comes back and says, hey, I want to sue Cedar Hills and I'm going to use the homeowners association. Well, we can go back and say, well, guess what? You guys signed off on this, so why are you challenging us on it now?
Do you think,
I think it's much.
Trent, that we can get them to give us something in writing?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, are we gonna wait till the next council meeting or what?
I'm hoping to get it to them as soon as we can, because I'd like to get this back on our table, just as
Yeah.
hear that.
I think it's important to include them in the process. even though-
They were included, they chose not to come.
Right, but even though they didn't come, I think it's good for us to reach out because it's good to develop that relationship with them and it'll serve us well along.
And Rob, I agree, and so just to add a final point of that, your city staff was well aware of that, and that's why the invitation specifically to the Utah Homeowner Association was made. And the fact that they didn't attend, I just want to stress again, y'all might have been a little worried like when they came in. They knew it was happening. That alone is a huge thing to know that, look, we're involving, Cedar Hills is involving the community in this process. So that in itself is a big check and stamp.
And that's what I'm trying to say, is that unlike any other public hearing where we just make an agenda notice and they have to come and find our public agenda or read in the paper or whatever the case is. We went out of our way this time to personally invite the Utah Valley Homeowners Association.
But it wasn't just Utah Valley home builders. I mean, we sent it out to developers,
Right.
contractors, anybody that had an interest in it got it also.
So
And
the
nobody
state
showed
property
up.
rights ombudsman was here. He got the invitation, he did come and review the process and gave his official stamp of approval as well. So just be aware of that, and if you want to take it further and go, that's fine. One thing I will just say, because I've had a little more conversation with those involved, your fees are dropping, so I'm sure they're not gonna have any problem. They'll probably look at, they'll probably see that all the fees are going down. By the way, it's page 12.
So it's 52%?
Page 12. This is going down.
39.
See, that's actually my area of concern for them. And So
Right,
I
so-
noticed that other cities, when they have lowered their impact fees, then the home builders turn around and say,
Well, when you say other cities, we're just talking about one, and that's American Fork. And in American Fork, the problem there was that, and this is a claim, I'm not sure it's substantiated, but the claim is that they were continually asking the city and trying to get the city to redo their study. Now, the city decided for the simplicity of it, and maybe some of those allegations were true.
I've
decided to settle.
heard that side, and then I've heard American Fork side. Neither makes me particularly comfortable, and so for that reason, then I think it makes sense to, I was hoping that the meeting with the home builders would have taken place already, but it wasn't, so that's why I think it makes sense to table it and have a sit-down meeting with them. And if we can get their blessing on this, then there's less chance of litigation in the future, and that's really what I want to do.
And that's what I want to get their buy-in for, specifically what you said, because if we get their backing, it makes it a lot harder for somebody to come challenge us in the future.
Yeah, so, I appreciate you being here, Kirby, particularly contributing to my daily sugar content, keep bringing us some chocolate. I appreciate that, I'm sure my doctor does, but thank you.
Can I ask one other quick question, Mayor? Can you really quickly go over that road amount for us and what you guys came up with on the roads and specifically why, just so that when we're having our discussions, I have as much information as possible?
Yes, that's page 12, which is page 12, you can see the summary of fees. That's mine, I'm turned on. So on page 12, you can see you're split into two areas, the culinary water, upper zone and lower zone. The roads fee is the same for both of those. Previously, it was a fee of $1,300, just over 13, that dropped to $625. So this decrease of just over 50%. So there's a couple reasons why that's going down in general. Now read the study, you'll have a good idea. It's not a particularly long one. A couple reasons. One is because the statute changed in a way that required you to be more specific. In other words, you couldn't take you couldn't calculate the value of your roads by saying, well, this is how much roads we have, this is how much roads cost, this is today's value of it, so we can get a good idea of the value. Well, the state statute was limited, particularly by lobbying by developers to say, no, you shouldn't be able to do that. You should only use the historic value of whatever it is. In order to do that, though, you have to have very specific records that show how much you paid for something, when you paid for it, documented. The city doesn't have those records. And so we had to exclude a fair amount of your infrastructure because for legal reasons. Now, that's not specific in the statute, but because, again, we took a conservative approach based on the direction from the city staff, we excluded those, that limits won't be. If you wanted to wait on that, and this was a discussion kind of city staff, if you wanted to wait on the roads and see if you could dig up more of those details, then you might get a bigger fee. Well, it's a decision of the city staff, and I was going to bring that to the city council, see what they want to do. That's the main reason. Second reason is because, again, the change in the state statute, you can only include projects in the next 10 years instead of about 20, 30, 40 years. So that limits the amount of new infrastructure that can be included as part of the cost. Those are the two big reasons.
Oh, great.
why we feel that. I'm happy if you want to wait. That's probably good to get specific buy-in with some names. If you can get something in writing, I'd be surprised. But if you can, that's great. And I don't think it would solve the issue that some people are feeling that maybe because they're going down we have a problem. But I would just stress again that it's always the prerogative of somebody if they don't feel that the studies that have been done are correct, they can either do their own or they can ask the city to do it. I'm not aware of either of those cases being done with the city's do those. So I think you're in good shape, even if these fees drop, you're not in the same situation like this.
Okay, thank you very much.
So Mayor, I'd like to make a motion if that's all right. I would like to motion that this item be tabled and allow myself and our superintendent David Bunker to take this information, present it to the Home Builders Association, and then come back with any possible recommendations or anything from the Home Builders Association, and then review this item at a later time.
I second the motion.
Does it make sense to have somebody from Zions or Rona Collins there as well, in case there are questions regarding the study that was already done?
We'd be happy to go if you'd like.
I think that would probably be a good idea.
Well, I think think what we need to do is present this information to them. They're not gonna be able to review it right there at that meeting. They're gonna send it off to their legal team and their executive directors. They will probably put together a recommendation, and then I think there may be a second meeting, which would be more beneficial to bring Zions into.
Why don't you send the invitation to them first before you have a meeting? That way, they will have had a chance to look at it, and then it may make sense to take other people's mind. If you feel like,
Well,
Just
we
think if
talked-
they're gonna ask for changes, it might make sense for the people who did the study to indicate why certain recommendations were made.
Right, what I'm saying is to drop off the information to them. I don't know that it's gonna make sense to take everybody initially, but I think we do need to have a meeting with them at some point when they make their recommendations, and at that point, yeah, I think it makes sense to bring Zions, Ben, and whoever else.
okay, so you'll drop by soon, and then you'll schedule a meeting shortly thereafter. And it's that meeting shortly thereafter, and it may make sense to bring Kirby from Zions and someone from Owen Collins.
Yeah.
So do we think we can get this on the agenda for the next meeting?
It's totally up to their schedule. I don't know if they are going to schedule a specific meeting for this, if they're gonna send it out and let each of them review it individually. I'll just have to talk to them and find out, but I will make it expeditiously as possible.
Okay, thank you. So, I've got a motion that's been seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Sepulveda.
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Reese.
Aye.
Mr. Augustus. Aye. Mr. Crowley.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. It's been tabled. Move on to item number 9. Review action item on a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign an interlocal cooperative agreement. Mr. Mogg, I believe you're presenting on this.
Yes, Mayor and Council, Cedar Hills has been a member of the Utah County Stormwater Coalition in the past, and time frame for the interlocal agreement is expired. It's a 5-year agreement, it has been the past agreements. So it was addressing that, the majority of the language of the agreement remains the same. However, there are 3 areas that I would like to point out that the language has been changed. One is on page 2, that's section 1, in which it changes this time period for the agreement from 5 years to 50 years. The second one would be section 4B on page 4. This authorizes the agency's representatives to review, approve, and modify Exhibit A on an annual basis. And Exhibit A is the document that calculates what each of the cities contribute to the coalition on an annual basis. The other one is section 5, on that same page, in which language has been added that allows any of the members of the coalition to withdraw from the coalition with a 60-day written notice. Those were the significant changes of the document. And staff recommends that you approve this. And the coalition is a great help to our city.
And does it look like Eagle Mountain's joining? This is
Eagle Mountain has requested that they be allowed to join the coalition, yes.
Okay.
So, quick question. So basically, the public education and outreach, these are all requirements from DEQ now, for stormwater.
Yes. The significant part of this coalition is that the language that we have to provide education to certain groups can be quite extensive and costly to the individual jurisdictions. This morning we had a training for the contractors as part of the coalition. And this fulfills the requirements the city has, but does it at a lesser cost. I know Salt Lake County, they've had to begin advertising. You see television ads, radio ads concerning stormwater issues. And it's been approached that Utah County also will have to do this. For our city to finance such a program would be extensive. If we do it as a coalition, and we can associate with other coalitions such as Salt Lake and divide that cost.
Any other questions from the council on this? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I can do that, sorry, I'm trying to get this in time. All right. I move that we approve resolution 2-4-2014A, interlocal cooperation agreement with the Utah County Stormwater Coalition for participation in the NPDES Phase 2 Stormwater Public Education and Outreach Best Management Practice Compliance.
A motion, is there a second?
A second.
A motion has been seconded. Any further discussion? Let's have a vote. Mr. Zabala.
Aye.
Mr. Geddes.
Aye.
Mrs. Reese.
Aye.
Mr. Augustus. Aye. Mr. Crowley. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
I do have to say, I find it entertaining that the acronym for the Stormwater Management Program is SWAMP. I guess so.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lowe, you are going to be presenting next on budget amendments.
Okay. Yeah, just a couple. First one, we visited a few times, and we discussed this in a retreat. And this is basically just rehashing that, where we have a driving range fence with a net that needs to be repaired. And we also have some posts that look like they need to be replaced. And we're able to work with two vendors. And the vendor that's doing the post replacement has given us an estimate of $10,000. And they're willing to let us pay $2,500 in cash and $7,500 in corporate passes, or as I have on this paper, season passes. And so we only pay $2,500 in cash for the new posts, and then the rest has to do with replacing the net for the whole driving range fence. And this is just an increase in what was approved earlier at $17,800.